Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in freshman English. We now turn in our MyPerspectives volume to Unit 6 of the consumable, page 694, World's End. Your question here is, what draws us to imagine doomsday scenarios and why are they so entertaining? Now, let's go ahead and say out loud that for everyone, they are not always so entertaining at all, right? They're often horrifying. But the question will be, why is it that we seem to be drawn to these what are sometimes referred to as dystopian or apocalyptic kinds of texts? If you'll turn to page 696 really quickly, I want you to go through unit goals, and then on to 697, I want you to do this academic vocabulary really quickly chart, and then we're going to turn finally to our Unit 6 introduction and our launch text. Now, as you'll see on page 698, this is a narrative model. I'll read with you. This selection is an example of a narrative text. Go ahead and circle it. A type of writing in which the author tells a story, all right? This is the type of writing that you'll be developing in your performance-based assessment here at the end of the unit. Now, as you read, concentrate on how the writer uses the elements of character, time, setting, of course what we've talked about in earlier lectures as the exposition of a story, right? Who is the character? Where are we in terms of time? And what is the setting of this story? Mark the text, annotate the text, to help you answer this question. How do specific details add to the portrayal of characters and events? Circle the word specific as we read through this. We'll listen to professional reader read, and then we'll come back to make some final observations, all right?
Dreams winter. Chase sat with his back to the old dead tree, scratching at a patch of hard, blackened earth with his compass. So what do you dream of, kid? The tribe on the hill operates like a football team did, back when there was such a thing. They're an elite unit, comprised of specialists. It wasn't long ago they took me in. They were impressed with my skills as a sneak. I got through 2.5 layers of security before they nabbed me, 9 paces from the shed. They accepted me because I'm a good shot with a rock, a makeshift spear, or a rifle. But they're not about to trust me with a ladder. I wouldn't expect them to. Chase is a scrounge. He has status here. I don't. One wrong word, one errant move, and they could throw me back down the hill, to waste away from starvation and thirst. So I stared at a pill bug on its back, little gray legs flailing, trying to right itself. I'm not touching this one, or that one either. Chase has a face that seems hacked out of flint, like an actor whose name I can't remember. He's old enough to be my father, I guess. That kind of thing doesn't matter like it used to. I dream of snow, he said, staring at me, looking past me. I stretched my legs. The pillbug stopped scrabbling. Kids playing in snow, he said. Rosy cheeks, little smiles, like the kids on the old soup cans. The bug turned itself over and started to run, then got near my left foot and stopped. I'm watching them through a tall, narrow window, he said. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him bend his head. I think he wanted me to look up. His eyes were so dark they seemed to be all pupils. They're too bright for my liking, but not harsh. My dining room used to have windows like that. Do you remember dining rooms, kid? I lifted my heel so it was poised above the bug. Roly-polies, they also call them. It curled into a ball, its shell a series of overlapping blackish-brown wedges. Then there's the flash, Chase said. Boom! Something shook in the pit of my gut, from down beneath uneasiness and hunger. Then it goes black, he said. I stare out the window. I can still hear the kids. I can't see them. They're saying something, whispering and laughing. For the life of me, I can't make it out. He stood up. I flicked the bug away. Pillbugs have blue blood. I remember reading that a few years ago in a book I pulled out of a ditch. But I didn't need to see this proved. Chase tried driving his stick into the crusty earth as if he was planting a flag. It snapped at a weak spot. He studied the broken end, protruding from his fist, like it was trying to tell him something. I used to wake up in a sweat every time I heard the bang, he said. Now I don't. Now I stay in the dream, straining in sleep to hear what those kids out there are saying. I looked up at him. His mouth had gone small, pulled to one side. He chewed at his inner lip. His eyes were wet. He tried to make them steely. The water bottles come out in a while, he said. Be ready. No one's going to call you. My foot had missed the bug. It took off, following Chase, as if it heard and understood about the water. John Carradine. That's the actor's name. I think I might have read that somewhere too.
Now let's go to work really quickly with this narrative model. Right away, I want you to jot this down in your consumable. How is this a different kind of narrative launch text model? How is this a different kind of launch text model than any that we've had before in our previous 5 units? Notice the difference in terms of narrative and narrative technique. Of course, the setting is everything here, right? We are dealing with a future where you find books in ditches, and a future where they ask, do you remember what dining rooms were like? So in other words, here we are in a dystopian kind of world. Now, what's up with dis? Well, dis means not, and of course utopia means a perfect place. So usually in these kinds of texts, and you can already jot down in 3A, your comparison to other texts, all of the dystopian types of texts. For those of us that know Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger's classic, the fact that kids are mentioned several times will bring us to the classic text, Catcher in the Rye. Now notice as we begin really quickly, we'll start with some giveaways, these specific kinds of things as they are being referenced. Notice the old dead tree, the fact that a compass is needed will all of a sudden give you some kind of insight. Notice, so what do you dream of, kid, is going to be the question that's asked. And then the tribe of the hill operates the way a football team did back when there was such a thing. So this is already giveaways, right, that we're dealing with something that's going on. Obviously, we're going to have some mention of water bottles here in a little bit. Notice right away, we're going to have an interesting exchange. And at the center of the exchange, in between the exchange, is a bug on its back. Now, what is the symbolism of the bug? Obviously, you can play that one out, right? That is to say, the helplessness, the inability, a bug on its back, unable to get over, the inability to figure out what is actually going on. And then notice, we're dreaming of snow, but not just snow, kids playing in the snow. And now we've got the image of children playing, children having fun. The dream will, on page 699, come back 2 different times. I watch the children through the window, and then he says at line 14, there's this flash, and then later we'll reference it as a bang, and of course you begin to kind of put it together. Oh, this is some notion of an apocalyptic age brought on by possibly environmental destruction that might have had something to do with some kind of, catastrophe, maybe a nuclear catastrophe or something along those lines, right? Notice in line 15, or in paragraph 15, he says, I can't make it out. I can't figure it out. In other words, there's a certain kind of epistemological ambiguity, right? What exactly is it? Do either of these 2 speakers really know? Notice they're trying to reclaim something from the past, but they're not quite sure what. But they know that whatever's happening now in the present, that for us would be a future, is not what one would want. Finally, of course, at the conclusion, he'll come back to remember the actor's name, John Carradine. But for him, notice, it's all about trying to somehow reclaim the past. Let's go ahead and jot down at level 1. This is obviously what is going on here. This is obviously an exchange in a time in the future when things are not so well, not at all so well. We'll go back to our reading of, for example, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring and the prediction that there will be silence. And you get the sense that there's kind of this silence in the middle of their conversation. At level 2A, what's the major message here for you? Some will argue that it is, of course, we can't really appreciate what we've got until it's gone. Books in a ditch, for example. At 2B, notice the exactitude of some of the language here. And notice the sharp dialogue, yes, that makes this a legitimate narrative. In other words, you can see these two characters having this exchange. Finally, at 3A, what are all of the texts for you that are this kind of text? We're going to look at Ayn Rand's Anthem. We're going to look at the video games that so many of us play that specifically will play this notion of the future. The Matrix, the Terminator films of a few years ago will play very similar kinds of games. Finally, a 3B question as we begin our Unit 6 and our study of the future. What do you predict the world will be like in 500 years? Like, what do you imagine it will be like? Will it in fact be a place of great peace and prosperity? Or do you imagine that something terrible will have happened that makes that world of the future really, really a troubling world of the future? Well, let's go ahead now. We'll turn to our Unit 6 and some of the more compelling readings that you'll read in your freshman year. They're going to challenge you. At least I hope so. Thank you.